Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today is week 12 of my film journey, where I've been continuously writing down, I'm actually running out of pages here now, of the films and shows that I've been watching, the things that I've been picking up, and it's been a real blast for the last 12 weeks, and hopefully I can continue to do this up until week 52, so we'll see if we're going to keep going past that. But it is October now, so that means it is spooky month. So I've been queuing up for that. In fact, I've been watching a lot of spooky films, and if you've been following along, you know I've already been in that mood lately. So today we're going to cover some of the spooky films that I watched this week, and then also kind of preview the next video that I'm going to be doing, where I'm going to be talking about maybe a really big box set where I did cover. This is one of the sets that I'm going to be covering for the month of October, so I'm excited for that. But yeah, let's jump into the titles that I picked up first before we jump into the things that I've watched. And I would love to know, real quick, before we jump into this, I would love to know what you've been watching all week for the first week of October, and then also what you've been picking up. And so this week I actually picked up 3 titles. Technically one's a box set, so there's like 5 actually. 2 of them I'm actually going to cover at the end of the video because I watched those movies. And the other one I'm going to talk about is the Sergio Martino collection from Arrow Video. Now, this has been out for some time now. I actually just have the normal, just Blu-ray kind of edition of this, the slender pack, not the hardcover one that a lot of other people have. But regardless, I'm here for the movies. And I've been in a Giallo mood a little bit. And thank you to my buddy Sam, who actually got this. He just recently watched one of the films in here, and we're going to talk about that movie first, actually, and is the second film in this lineup. But this is a huge box set. This is actually one of the best Giallo filmmakers that I have not seen much of, and we'll talk a little bit about one of the films in particular. But this edition has 3 films here. One is The Case of the Scorpion's Tail, which is probably one of the most famous films from this director. The other one is Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, which is a long title, and the one we're going to be talking about. And then The Suspicious Death of a Minor. So these 3 films right here, here are the 3 films. There's the first right there. I love the artwork on this. This looks absolutely gorgeous. Looks like a very seductive time, I suppose. And then there is the one we're going to be talking about today. And then also The Suspicious Death of a Minor, which interesting title. But regardless, let's talk about the first film that I watched, Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key. Now this film, wow, I did not know what to expect, and like I said, this is a recommendation from my buddy Sam, so thank you so much for getting this on my mind, and so I picked up this first title. So this film came out in 1972 and might be one of my favorite Giallos I've ever watched, and one that I did not expect to have as many twists and turns as it does, because it really does kind of take you down a labyrinth of plot points that, and also parts that you're thinking, okay, which person is the killer? Because there's multiple points in this movie where there is a killer that is introduced, but that's not necessarily the killer. But this movie is terrific, and especially Edwin Fenech, who is very attractive in this movie. Anita Strindberg and Luigi Pistelli are all terrific in this, and I love the way that this film kind of goes in all these different directions. And honestly, it's something that I want people to watch and experience themselves. But wow, what a really loaded bit of like good schlock that you get from a slasher film like this, like an Italian Giallo, which has some good horrific kind of bloody scenes that maybe aren't as pronounced as some other Giallo films, but there are some really great sequences in this movie that really kind of had my hair in the back of my neck standing up. But this movie, like I said, the twists and turns in particular, where it leads to the climax, really do sell this point. And I think this is one of the best written Giallos out there, and definitely one of the most sporadic ones as well. And so it's just a really fun time, and I definitely recommend people check this movie out. I love the cover of this. I actually twisted this around because there's actually some Arrow commissioned artwork right there, but I actually like the original artwork the most for this particular release. But this movie, I would give a 4 out of 5. It's something that I need to rewatch a little bit further, and just really jump more into the special effects. And I actually watched some of the special features on this disc as well, where Sergio Martino talks about his time watching this. So Through the Keyhole is one of the interviews that he talks about, and also there is a retrospective bunch of interviews with Edwidge Finnick, who I can never say her name right, but she's gorgeous, and she talks about a lot of her time, working on this film, and didn't expect it to be such a big deal, because she normally played more of a sweetheart in previous roles. So she talks a lot about how she kind of changed this around to be a little bit more seductive, a little bit more on the dark side, and you'll know exactly what I mean by this when you watch this movie. There's some really interesting things going on in it, but I definitely recommend people check this movie out. It is a terrific giallo and one for your collection. So moving right along, we go to the last day of September, and I'm still in the horror mood, and I'm prepping for the month. And the film that I wanted to watch, and one that my friend, who actually was able to come over and watch this on 4K, was watching Hellraiser. And he hadn't seen Hellraiser before, so I wanted to show him the sights that he was going to, I guess, unfold that you would see in this movie. Now, this is a great box set from Arrow Video that came out last year, the Quartet of Torment, and this is the the first 4 films in the collection. It is a really great set right here. In fact, I want to show it off just for a little bit. There is a really cool book called Age of Desire, which this whole entire thing by Clive Barker is all about sensual pleasures, but also pain and torture and that sexual desire. So there's a lot of that stuff going on, but then there's a lenticular slipcase right here with some flesh, kind of just different layers, and I'm in hell, help me. And then also, we shall have such sights to show you, which is one of the more iconic lines from this franchise and then from the first film. And there's some bone-chilling lines that are said in the first film that really just kind of really gets under your skin, I would say. But this, like I said, this set has the first 4 films in it right here. So we only watched the first film, and one that was really ripe for rewatch for me, because I only had seen the first 3 films last year for the first time, and I really enjoyed that journey. And I was excited to check out the new 4K restoration, which I think Arrow did a wonderful job with, but it was just fun watching it with my friend who hadn't seen it before. And it really is kind of like a weird melodrama that also enjoys a little bit of the supernatural. The practical effects in this are stunning and really, really well done. Very much in the Cronenberg sense, where almost like The Fly in a way, because it's like a doomed romance story with some really fucked up people. But it was fun watching it with my friend again, and I like I said, I think this movie, it ages really, really well. And there are definitely some things that I noticed a little bit closer when I was watching it that were a little bit more, I guess, what's the word? Maybe a little bit more tacky, but at the same time, I just fully enveloped into this world. And I think this is one of the best films from 1987. One that still haunts me in my dreams a little bit, and one that I think has a legendary reputation about it, and is a reason why we watch films like this today. I'd give this movie a 4.5 out of 5. It is just a terrific time and a wonderful release from Arrow Video. If you are familiar, just check out the first Hellraiser. It's really worth your time. All right, so we're finally to October, and we're jumping into the 31 Days of Halloween, where I'm watching 31 films. And there are a few titles that I will say are not necessarily horror, and we'll get to that in a second. But the first thing I watched during the beginning, and I woke up like this, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to watch a werewolf movie. So I started Moon of the Wolf. This is a Vinegar Syndrome VSA. This is by number 28. I think I have a limited edition 182 out of 5,000. But this is a TV movie from 1972. It is a really fun little werewolf movie. More like a police procedural, I would argue, is more like what this is. And like I said, it's a TV movie. It's set in the bayou, so I think around Louisiana. It's about some murders that keep happening in the swamp. And these bodies keep piling up, and people are like, well, who is killing this, and what is killing this? And of course, it's a werewolf. It is not necessarily the most action-packed, and definitely you can tell there were a lot of commercial breaks intended for a lot of what was to come, right? So it's a tight little film from 70. It's 75 minutes long, so you can really tell that it's spaced out like that. But honestly, the last 10 minutes of the film is where you see the most action. You see the Wolfman himself. It is definitely more like a Wolfman. You can kind of tell in that picture right there. But he definitely looks more like the Wolfman, and definitely more akin to that. And it almost feels like a weird Universal monster film in a way, but like a TV movie version of it. It's not necessarily the best, and the practical effects are not necessarily the greatest either, but I definitely would still recommend watching this movie. I wouldn't necessarily buy this movie from Vinegar Syndrome because it's a lot of money, but I would say it's a solid 2.5 out of 5. It is definitely very much of its time, but a really cool American kind of take on this werewolf tale. Next, from there, on October 2nd, I watched a film that is not necessarily a horror film. It's more of a sci-fi dystopian film, and I'm talking about Soylent Green. And yes, you can say in the comment section, this isn't a horror film. Well, the concept is. The concept is pretty horrifying, and I kind of use that term loosely, and honestly, it's the month of whatever it can be, and we're going to talk about a thriller here in a second, and that's not necessarily a horror film, but I did watch some other horror films to kind of add to that 31 days. So if that's your boat and you want to die on that hill, then we're going to do that. But let's talk about Soylent Green. So this movie came out in 1973 and is starring Charlton Heston and Lee Taylor Young, and also the last performance really of Edward G. Robinson, who is a classic actor who honestly this might be one of the best parts of this movie. But this is like I said, a dystopian sci-fi tale of Charlton Heston, who is taken this job that a lot of society is kind of pretty much removed from. There's pretty much upper class and a lower class, and the lower class lives together in droves. A lot of people sleep in the very limited housing that there is left. There's people who sleep on the staircases together, where they don't have rooms themselves, and it is a pretty sharp contrast to what today's world is like, but also at the same time a little bit on the nose about some of the plight of actual society and humanity during this time period, but also of today. So there's a lot of satire, and there's a little jabs at modern society. But regardless, this movie is about Charlton Heston's character kind of going through this job, working as this agent that slowly unravels a mystery that is happening with the higher class that is taking over a little bit further. And there's this food, this Soylent food that is given to a lot of the masses because food has kind of dwindled, and you can only get a little bit of it. There's been Soylent Red and another Soylent color, but now there's introducing Soylent Green, which is one that's like a hybrid of those earlier Soylents, and one that's more rich in nutrition for humans, right? But as a lot of people already know, the twist of this movie comes near the end, and you see that in the frightening kind of finale of this movie, where Charlton Heston kind of proclaims to the people that Soylent Green is people. And it is made out of that. But I want to go back to Edward G. Robinson in this film, and that's probably the best part of this movie. He is one of Charlton Heston's best friends in this movie, and one of his confidants who is consistently coming to him and talking about a lot of these discoveries that they're making. And Edward G. Robinson's character decides to, and I think this might be one of the first times in cinema history to showcase something like this, but it talks about an assisted, suicide, which is not necessarily a grand thing to show, but it is weirdly cathartic to see Edward G. Robinson go through, I guess, the process of what this sci-fi film would show is this, where he goes into this room and he chooses a color, and he chooses his favorite color and some music, and then they show him images of various things, of beautiful landscapes and of animals and of flora and fauna and of so many different things. But it is pretty much a send-off to him, and Charlton Heston shows up at the last minute and can see him through the glass window, and it is a very touching scene, and actually one of the best scenes I've seen in a movie in a long time, and one that really touched me. And I really enjoyed that particular aspect of this movie. I wouldn't necessarily say this is one of the greatest movies out there, but it is definitely a fun sci-fi dystopian film with some horrific undertones going on with it. So I'd give this movie a 3 out of 5. It's definitely one to check out, and if you've never seen it before, I know I just spoiled the ending, but it's definitely worth watching nonetheless. All right, so during the middle part of the week, I decided, you know what, I'm going to jump into a box set, and this is actually what my next video is going to be on, so I'm not going to talk too much about this particular one, but I wanted to watch and check out Ju-On the Grudge collection. This is a terrific box set, and I am so excited to talk about these films here. But I watched the first two films the same night, the Ju-on the Curse and Ju-on the Curse 2. And let's just say that I woke up, and I fell asleep in the last 5 minutes of the second one. And let's just say I woke up a little terrified. And that's all, I'll just give it to you. But I did watch this entire collection this week, and boy oh boy do I have a lot to say about it. And I love this collection, and I cannot wait to talk about it. But yeah, next video we're going to talk about Ju-on the Grudge collection. Next, we're going to move to a film that I watched one morning that I wanted to check out during this month as well. And let's just say it's not a horror film. Again, I watched some horror films, which I will cover 2 of them here in a second, that will kind of float the horror mood for everyone. But I did watch Alfred Hitchcock's third talkie, Murder. Murder with an exclamation mark. I should have said that. But this is a very interesting tale, and one that actually was remade. There's actually 2 editions of this. One is called Mary. It's a 1931 German version of this film, which I have not seen just yet. I actually watched the first like 20 minutes of it, and I thought that was a little bit more engaging. I think the runtime is maybe what gets this movie down a little bit of a peg, because this runtime is 102 minutes. The other one is more around the maybe 90-minute mark, the 85-minute mark. So it does shave off some time, and I think that might be a positive in that light. But we can talk about Mary later as we jump into Murder, though. But Murder is a procedural as well, a courtroom procedural that is a little less on the visual expression of what we'd expect from a Hitchcock film. This is his third talkie, so talkies, it's 1930 as well, so these were some experimental years for a lot of filmmakers in terms of transitioning from the silent era to the films where they would have some sound and some people talk about some dialogue. And this feels more maybe like a theatrical production, more like a whodunit of sorts, where there is this actress who is bludgeoned to death at the very beginning of this film. This one actress is blamed, and she is blamed for killing Edna Druce, and this whole entire thing is this conspiracy going on about it. And so it really kind of delves into that conspiracy a little bit, and does it so through in a lot of like closed back rooms where the police and the court are like talking to different people, but also in the courtroom itself. And it has a really interesting finale. The finale actually itself is probably the best part of this film, I would say. But the dialogue is quite intense, and you can definitely tell early on in this film who did it. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best representation of what Hitchcock would showcase later on in his career. But this movie is a solid like 2.5 out of 5. It's not necessarily something to go run home about, but it is a really interesting addition, and I actually am excited to check out Mary whenever I get the chance. All right, and the last 2 films I want to talk about are 2 that I picked up alongside the Sergio Martino collection. It is 2 from Shudder, actually, ones that I picked up mainly because my friend Steph over at Movie Chatter, she recommended these films, and one of them I actually had already seen on Shudder, and the other one I had not seen or heard of. And that first one is Boys from County Hell and When Evil Lurks, which we'll talk about here in a second. But let's talk about Boys from County Hell, this really fun 2020 Irish black comedy horror of sorts that it's definitely more of a horror film with some really comedic elements, of course. Like I said, it's that black comedy. But this film is a very interesting take on the vampiric legend and the Dracula legend. In fact, the very beginning of this film, it's really just set in this one little town where in the middle of a field there is a pile of rocks that is considered a grave for an ancient vampire who they deem is Dracula, which gave inspiration to Bram Stoker's famous tale. And they always say that the English stole it. But regardless, this movie is a very interesting take on, like I said, the vampiric tradition, because there are some different things that you would not normally see in a vampire film. A little less biting and a little bit more stabbing of sorts. And it's pretty bloody, but it's also quite fun. And I won't get into the kind of like what reveals and what turns people into vampires, but what was really interesting is the practical effects in here. It's very bloody, it's very sensational, but at the same time it's really engaging and in a really fun way, because like I said, it's a comedy, so there's definitely some moments where you put yourself in the shoes of the people who are going through this tragedy, and you're like, well, I would probably do similar things, or at least maybe I don't know. I would definitely try to joke to ease the tension that's going on in this movie, but it is a fun one, and I definitely recommend people check this out if they have Shudder. Definitely watch it on there. But if you are wanting a physical disc, this is a great recommendation, and I got it for a pretty good price. So again, thank you, Steph, for recommending this. I'd give this movie a 3.5 out of 5. It's just a really fun time, and I really enjoyed it. So definitely check this movie out if you've not seen it before. And the last film that I picked up is one that I had seen before on Shudder, and it is When Evil Lurks. And this movie is a fantastic Argentinian film. In fact, I've watched 2 really great Argentinian films as of late, Trinque la Queen, and now this, but very different in various ways. But this is another, if I talked about gratuity and horror in that last film, let's talk about it in this movie, which is a lot more pronounced and a lot more insidious in a lot of the ways that it goes. In fact, this would be a really good pairing with the Ju-on collection that I'm talking about because of the virality of this particular curse. So I guess in this town, there is, I guess the whole world is as aware of possession and is aware of people getting possessed, and it is very infectious. And ways to pretty much avoid this is to not kill that person who is infected by getting, I guess, priests or some kind of way to exorcise that demon out of this evil spirit. But this evil spirit is so contagious that pretty much anything that kills the host will take on its form. And so this movie goes on a lot of wild rides, and it is definitely a lot of fun, and you won't expect a lot of the directions that this movie goes. And in fact, you can kind of see at the very beginning of the film this woman with an axe, mainly because maybe she accidentally killed something that possessed it. And anyway, you'll find out when you watch it. It's a glorious looking movie as well, not just because of the gory effects, but it's just shot really beautifully. I think this movie is just a gorgeous set of a film, and it really goes all over the place through this Argentinian town, and it really does showcase how horrifying some of these scenes are. In fact, there's a dog scene that really scares the hell out of me. That I grew up with dogs, and so I definitely do not like seeing something like that and watching things like that unfold. But it is a terrifying release. It's definitely something I recommend people check out. I also got it for a really good deal on Amazon, just like Boys from County Hell. This is a great release. Definitely recommend checking it out. Watch it out on Shudder. This is a 4 out of 5. This movie is really good, and one that I think a lot of people will watch in the future. So with that being said, that is the end of week 12 for this spooky week. But don't worry, the Grudge collection is coming on Ju-on. It will be talked about next, and I'm super excited to dive into that box set because there is a lot of a wealth of stuff that I can talk about that I really, really enjoy. But I'm excited to talk about that. But real quick, in the comment section down below, let me know what you've been picking up and what you've been watching for the month of October. I hope it's been a spooky week for you, and I hope the spooky month continues. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.